everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. My name is Julianne Worden, and I will be your moderator this evening as we travel along with Rick. Tonight, we are going Dutch as we explore the Netherlands outside of Amsterdam. And now, without further ado, I'll turn things over to Rick Steves, who will be our tour guide this evening. Hi, Rick.
Julianne, thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks everybody for joining us on Monday Night Travel. I just love Monday nights because we get to travel together, and every week we go somewhere exciting, and today we're going to the Netherlands without Amsterdam. What a fun challenge to make a TV show, half an hour of the Netherlands without even stepping into Amsterdam. We went to, it's so much fun because everybody goes to Amsterdam and there's so much more out there. So today we're going to celebrate the Netherlands, learn a lot about it, and we're going to have some fun along the way. So thank you for coming in. I just love this Monday opportunity to enthuse about travel. As you know, normally I'm in Europe 100 days out of the year, and can't do that this year, didn't do it last year, but we can't let this pandemic derail our travel dreams. It can delay our travel plans, but not ruin our travel dreams. That is for sure. So thank you for being here. Make yourself at home. Hope you're with your favorite travel partner. Hope you got something to drink and something to munch on. I'm going very Dutch tonight, as Julianne mentioned, and I'm going to start that off with a nice, beautiful antique gin glass. And that's nice, but it's much nicer when it's filled up. And I'm going to be drinking something called Jenever. Jenever, and this is Dutch gin, Jenever. And it's kind of like Scotch whiskey, but it's not quite as full of alcohol. And it's to be sipped, and it's to be drunk at room temperature. And, oh yeah, that's 38% alcohol, and that's about 100% Holland, okay? So I'm going to be sipping on this. They've got old and young. If you go into a bar in Holland, you'll see Jenever because it looks like Jennifer, but it's pronounced Jenever. And it always says old or young. You can almost kind of read the Dutch words. And it doesn't mean like just a little bit and a long time aged. It has nothing to do with that. It's old style or new style. In the last 100 years, they've made a young version, which is easier to sip. And they keep the old style for the traditionalist. And it's a little more heavy. And this one is the old style. It's old Jenever. Aged in a vat for 1 year, 38% alcohol, and it goes well with pickled herring. And I'm going to have some pickled herring. This is probably the ugliest thing I've ever offered to you on my laptop here, but that is pickled herring. And when you're in the Netherlands, you got to try the herring. You'll like it at breakfast. You'll like it in a hot dog stand. You will like it. Just drop it down in the whole fish, or you will cut it up in little bits. We'll learn which is Amsterdam style and which is Rotterdam style. I forget, frankly, but it doesn't matter. But I'm going to be having mine on crackers, like the Dutch like to. And also for dessert, I'm going to have something that we all know and love when we go to the Netherlands. This is a waffle, but it's called a stroopwafel. And a stroopwafel is a syrup waffle. And this is, you set it on your coffee or your tea cup, and it gets nice and drippy. You can kind of see the drippiness there. And that's a beautiful syrup. So you're gonna have a syrup waffle, and I'm gonna be enjoying that later. But right now, we're gonna head off and do some traveling. And we're gonna go, as I said, to the Netherlands without Amsterdam, but I had to go to Amsterdam to get there. In fact, as I was preparing this, I stumbled onto an old video of mine that I just took from my Facebook post. And it has me on a very fast train going from Frankfurt to Amsterdam, going from my research the guidebooks mode into my TV host mode. And it's a very rough video, but it takes about 3.5 hours to get from Frankfurt to Amsterdam. And if I'm researching, I've got 3.5 hours of hard work to do, typing all that information into the guidebook for Germany and getting that tucked away so I can focus on the Netherlands. I'm going about 100 miles an hour in fantastic luxury. Let me take you right now, before we get to Holland, on the train that 6 years ago took me to Holland. And that is a beautiful express train across Germany that you could go on today. So here we are, just a very candid, impromptu look at how I spend my time on a train.
West Germany. This is the Orient train. I'm happy as a clam because I've got my computer with electricity. And I'm right next to the captain. And I'm settling in here. I got a nice coffee. I've been working on the 2015 edition. And I've got my sandwich, my carrots, my notes, my laptop, endless energy. And in 6 hours, I'll be in Amsterdam meeting the film crew, finishing up research in Germany, and now ready to make some TV shows. First thing to do, finish all my notes from the last few days of running around Germany, put them into this laptop, and email it home. Happy travels.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. The people here claim if you stand on a chair, you can see all across their country. This is the best of the Netherlands. Thanks for joining us. Traveling here, it's easy to see how the Netherlands is a lot like its people. Efficient, a good balance of old and new, hard work and fun, innovation and tradition. Even with a dense population and an ongoing battle with the sea, the Dutch are warm and even-keeled. We'll cruise through a mighty port, go for an old-fashioned sail, and visit the ultimate flower market. We'll marvel at Dutch masters, smoke some eels, pull out all the stops on an unforgettable organ, and start up a classic windmill. In the west of Europe is the Netherlands, with 12 provinces, including North and South Holland. Everything we'll see is within an hour of Amsterdam. We'll sail what was the Zuiderzee, blocked off by long dams. Explore characteristic towns from Delft to Rotterdam and Haarlem to Marken, with lots in between. Most Dutch travel dreams are set in the area called Holland, and that's where we'll be spending most of our time. Like many fortified old cities. So I just want to break in here and remind you, Holland, the Netherlands, so easy to travel in. I mean, trains go like clockwork, like 4 times an hour from town to town. And towns are so close together. It's 15, 20 minutes in the train to get from one major town to the next. We start our best of Europe tours in the Netherlands. We've done that for 30 years. It is just the perfect springboard for the best of Europe. You fly into Amsterdam, so easy. Everybody speaks English. Everything's cute and so Dutch, you know. And if you get there a few days early, you can putter around in the Netherlands by using the public transportation. Remember, the train schedules are so easy. We stay in the town outside of Haarlem, Amsterdam, Haarlem, and at a glance, you can remember the train schedule for the whole day because it's 20 after the hour, 30 after the hour, and 50 after the hour, or whatever. And then every 20 minutes or something, you've got a train leaving. The towns are easy to connect. Amsterdam's easy to side trip into. I like staying in a small town and side tripping into Amsterdam. And as I mentioned, there's no language barrier. Delft welcomes you with the twin towers of its city gate, graced by an old drawbridge and a canal moat. Its delightful architecture recalls the Golden Age, the 17th century pinnacle of Dutch trade and sea power. Quaint scenes line intimate canals. It's Thursday, and that means market day in Delft. In towns all over the Netherlands, main squares become thriving markets one day a week. It's late June, and the herring are in season. And every market comes with a cheesemonger, almost evangelical about the tastiness of Dutch cheese. Ask a question, and you're in for an education, complete with samples. This is young. How young is this?
About 4 or 6 weeks.
So tell me about this one.
4.5 years old, handmade and quite strong. We have Sometimes we have them even older.
I like that. Give me a glass of port and this is my dessert.
Yeah.
So remember, the markets are open in most cases just 1 or maybe 2 days a week. So when you're visiting a town, if you're really on the ball, as you're planning your itinerary, you might want to find out, and you can find out very easily just going online, what day is the market day? Because here we have the main square in Delft, and in front of the church, the whole square is filled with market stalls. Lots of fun. All the people are out, lots of bicycles. It is the time to be there, but it's 1 day a week.
Towering over the square is the church with its brick steeple rocketing skyward. And facing that, overseeing the town's commerce as it has for nearly 1,000 years, is the City Hall. Much of the Netherlands is built on soggy land. The City Hall, with its heavy stone jail, was built on the most solid land in town. The leaning church, just down the canal, not so much. The town's historic canals both drained the land and provided a transportation network for barges. Today, the old barges are retired. Many are permanently moored in front of cafes and restaurants for outdoor dining. Over the centuries, these little canals shipped out countless barge loads of the town's famed earthenware.
So we have our little streeteries in my town where restaurants have spilled into the streets. So during the pandemic, we can eat and be outside and get a lot of ventilation. Talk about a natural streetery. They got a canalery there. They just tie a barge up to the canal in front of the restaurant. And even without the pandemic, they're eating outside because the atmosphere is just so great.
Delftware is famous.
Actually, I want to remind you, everything in this country is so Dutch. I've been on tours where I keep hearing people in the back marvel when they look out the window. Everything is so Dutch. Canals, bikes, flowers, and of course, this classic Delftware. And you can go to the factory right there in Delft.
All around the world. Royal Delft, the oldest surviving workshop established back in the 1600s, welcomes visitors to drop in and see how it's made. Visitors to the factory follow the process. First, the liquid clay is poured into plaster molds. When dry, it's removed and the seams are smoothed off. Then it's baked. And then lovingly painted by hand. A mesmerizing scene, unchanged for centuries. After being glazed to fix the paint, it's baked a second time, during which the paint turns blue. That's the secret of Royal Delft Blue since 1653. The finished product? This highly valued earthenware. Rooms of historic Delftware show off this art. This table setting is laid out as if it was the home of a wealthy person here in Delft. The Netherlands is small, smaller than West Virginia, and the most densely populated country in Europe. Most of the country is below sea level, reclaimed with great effort over many generations from the sea. That's why they like to say, God made the world, but the Dutch, we made Holland. This is polder land. Much of it once covered by the sea, it was encircled by dikes and dams and then drained. To pump out all that water, the Dutch used one of their leading natural resources, the wind. For centuries, the Dutch built windmills. Over 1,000 survive, and many still work. Some welcome visitors interested in a peek at the clever engine that powered the creation of this land. I'm standing on reclaimed land, 12 feet below sea level. The challenge for the Dutch, to keep this land dry by pumping water uphill. Many windmills used their wind power to turn an Archimedes screw like this, which by rotating in a tube, lifted water up and over the dike.
Boy, imagine this technology. It's back from the 1600s. Wonder of a day, wonder of its day. Now, the trick for us is find a windy day and climb up and feel the creaking oak beams as those sails catch the wind. You know, it's a funny filming challenge for me because I needed to have those wheels turning. We're going to go inside the windmill right now. And for several days, we didn't have enough wind. And I was just thinking, well, turn on the windmill. But you got to have wind before the windmill can be in action. We found the wind, and now let's go inside and see those sails get enough inertia going so they can turn that Archimedes screw and pump a little water.
To catch the desired amount of wind, millers, like expert sailors, know just how much to unfurl the sails or furl them back as necessary. Mills are built with sturdy oak timber frames to withstand the constant tension. These timbers have stood strong since the 1600s. When the direction of the wind shifts, the miller turns the cap of the building, which weighs many tons, to face the breeze. As he spins the winch, it all slides on these wooden roller bearings. Then, with a hefty chain, he anchors it in the correct spot. As the wooden cogs connect, wind becomes clean power. Archimedes' screw rotates, and the water spirals up. The Dutch had long eyed what was the vast inland Zuiderzee as a source of new land. This 18-mile-long dam was built as one of many steps in turning that sea into farmland. The master plan, cordon off sections of the shallow sea with hundreds of miles of dams and dikes like this. Then, by draining each section dry, piece by piece, build a bigger country.
You know, I was just thinking, I love this so much. I remember how excited I was to be able to climb up on the top of this dike here. And time again, it occurs to me, how much we get out of our sightseeing is determined by how much we bring to it, how much understanding you bring to it. I would bet most tourists that drive across this dike don't really understand what's going on. I mean, really understand, why did they make this dike? How did they reclaim the land? Why does that matter today? If you know a little bit about what you're looking at, your sightseeing is twice as fun, and that makes your trip twice as good.
These fields were once the bottom of that wide open sea. Gradually, land was reclaimed, and today the Netherlands is twice the size it was 400 years ago. Because of this reclamation, what had been fishing villages on little islands, like Schokland, are now high and dry mounds rising above fertile farmland. Behind this sturdy stone and wood seawall, this tiny community once harvested the sea. In its day, this cannon warned visitors of a high tide. I'm standing below sea level. I know that because I picked up a handful of dirt and it came with some shells. And this marks sea level, according to the official Amsterdam measure, 0. Imagine, a couple generations ago, this buoy bobbed in the harbor. What was the bottom of the sea is now productive farmland.
Okay, so now I've spliced something in that's a little extra. People always say, show me something that ended up on the cutting room floor. You know that saying. It is sometimes so frustrating when we bring home so much great stuff and you can't put it in a trash masher and fit it into a 30-minute show. It's 34 minutes. Something's got to go. Oh, heartbreaking. So this is Mayel. She runs a company called Wetland Safari. I love her. She's been in my Amsterdam guidebook for 10 or 15 years. And she took me out on a trip when 60 Minutes was tracking me around Europe a long time ago. And if you want to see the 60 Minutes episode, it features me and Mayel enjoying some great sightseeing. You can just get online and search for Rick Steves in 60 Minutes or something. But I found the 2.5 minutes of the bit that we shot with Mayel that did not make it into this show. And I've spliced it in because we can go more than 30 minutes. And I'm going to show it to you right now. I do want to remind you that we're going to have a flash poll at the end of the video here. And you get to decide which is your favorite experience of the time. And then we'll see what the most popular one is. And I got to say, I'm enjoying do you remember the name of this? Dutch gin, the pronunciation. If you just read it, it looks like Geneva, but it's Geneva, right? Geneva. And you sit in a little Dutch bar, sip one of these, grimace if you do, if you're not a whiskey drinker, and you'll make friends with the person next to you. And it's a perfect excuse to get into a conversation. And I do got to say, I'm loving my crackers and herring. We'll talk more about that later. But right now, let's go with Mayel on a wetland safari.
Pastoral look at the Netherlands. We're traveling just a couple miles north of Amsterdam. I'm joining Mayel Trump on one of her wetland safari canoe tours.
Here we go. And I just got to celebrate my crew. We are the smallest TV crew in the game. There's 3 of us, me, Simon, and the cameraman, either Carl or Peter. And we went out with Mayel. We got 3 hours to run around. Simon and Carl are in one canoe, and me and Mayel are in the other canoe. We all got microphones. We're trying to paddle. I don't know how to paddle a canoe very well. Mayel's never done this before. I've got an agenda to get so much information packed into this. Simon has an agenda to make beautiful television. And when our agendas come together, we get this next 2 minutes. I'm so happy with this clip.
Oh, anchors away. Mayel loves to introduce travelers to a quiet and pristine side of Holland that few experience. Here you can venture through the landscape of 17th century Holland, exploring villages that seem to be built on both land and water. So this is like a village where the front doors are facing the canal.
Yes, and we are in a boat because you need to get from A to B by boat. The milk is being picked up by boat.
So that's for fresh milk?
Yeah, for the fresh milk, and they brought it by boat to Amsterdam.
This is a pretty low bridge. You think it's okay?
Go forward, a little bit lower, a little bit lower. Yeah, yes, there we go. Welkom in Watergang.
This is called Waterland, huh?
Now,
Mayel, tell me about these little windmills.
the windmills are pumping water from low to high. We are here below sea level, so we need to keep pumping to keep our feet dry.
So this is land reclaimed from the sea, all of this,
It is, yes,
and turned into good farmland.
good farmland, yeah. It only can exist with keeping pumping.
That was beautiful. We dock our canoe so Mayel can tell us a bit about the terrain. So this ground is not very stable.
No, we are walking over water, and this is just dead plants, peatland.
So this is just a weave of plants,
Yes.
and there's water under us.
Yes. So, Rick, I'm jumping on water now.
It's like a trampoline, isn't it?
Yes, and I show you even better. Look at this. Underneath is 90 feet of water.
Oh my goodness.
And that is why Amsterdam is built on poles.
Now I understand. The salty seabed soil with a mix of
Wow. Mayel is a dream come true if you happen to be running around wanting to make a TV show and get a local voice into your program. I love to get a local voice. Her accent is so good. She knew just how to be so interesting and informative. She is just a blessing to have in my guidebook and to be able to connect our travelers with. These are the kind of experiences that we build our program on. It's so much fun to be going to Europe. And during this pandemic, I've felt so sad for so many of my friends in Europe who have worked so hard, like Mayel and like all of our tour guides in Europe. And now finally, things are getting kicked into gear and we're ready to get back over there and start traveling again. So now we're back to the actual show. And but that was just a little bit that didn't make it into the show.
rain, sunshine, and clever crop rotation eventually becomes extremely fertile. One thing the polder soil grows particularly well is flowers. And here at the Aalsmeer Flower Auction, it's clear, flowers are big business in Holland. Visitors are welcome in this, one of the world's largest commercial buildings.
So now this is right by Schiphol Airport. And, you know, when I go to Europe, very, very often I'm flying direct from Seattle to Schiphol. It's a great entry point. And early in the morning, if you're around early in the morning, you go to the flower market in Aalsmeer and I'm standing on the public mezzanine level where everybody can watch. And this is just one of the great opportunities to see an auction and this frantic dance of merchants and wholesalers getting their flowers to the market really quick.
They witness millions of dollars in the trafficking of flowers. In its auction halls, hundreds of wholesalers bid on trainloads of flowers as they roll by. To get the flowers out as fresh as possible, everything happens fast, including the bidding. A Dutch auction is speedy because the prices go from high to low. Batches of flowers are sold to the first buyer to press the button. buyers must be lightning quick. It's the only way to sell so many flowers in one morning. Strolling the fragrant catwalk, it's fun to peer down on the action. They boast that fresh flowers go from cutting in the fields to flower shops anywhere in Europe within 24 hours.
So this reminds me of the scramble it takes to make a good TV show. It's not that tough to make a mediocre TV show, but to make it sparkle, you got to get right in there. And we begged and pleaded to let our cameraman on one of these little motorcycles that drive the flowers around so we can get what's called a POV, a point of view shot. Just missing these trains of flowers. And they finally let us do it. Made a huge difference. This is the kind of scrambling you do. You can't make a reservation for that. They give you, an appointment and okay to shoot this, but no, you can't get down on the floor level with them. Please, it's going to make a huge difference. And usually people are human about it and they let us. We opened the show with standing on a chair. We didn't have that chair in our car. We had to borrow that chair from a farmer just nearby. He probably still remembers that crazy American film crew. Here we go. POV in the biggest flower market in the world.
Workers scramble to get each buyer's purchase assembled on a train and shipped out. The Dutch are the world's leading flower exporters.
Imagine how fun it would be if you're the camera person with that camera, your knees are grabbing your saddle on that motorcycle and you're just near missing all these train loads of fresh flowers. What a fragrant adventure.
80% of these flowers are going abroad. Every day from this building, 20 million flowers are shipped, destined to make someone's day.
Sorry, I'm just geeking out here on the importance of getting down on the floor and getting those POVs on a moving cart, to be in there in the action. Boy, that makes a huge difference.
The industrious heritage of the Dutch people is evident in its many historic cities. Haarlem is a Dutch master's kind of town, with plenty of 17th century architecture. The town gate, no longer needed as part of its fortification, welcomes all into a delightful old town. Haarlem's Market Square, traffic-free since the 1960s, has been the town's focal point for centuries. The herring stand is a standard feature of small town squares throughout Holland.
Hello.
Hi.
Is it herring time now, or are these fresh?
It's fresh. It's
Yeah.
no herring season, so it's
In the summertime,
great.
it's good.
Yeah, summer times.
So what are my options?
The options outside of Amsterdam, they grab it from the tail,
And
so
just
they
send it
slide
right
it inside and they bite it.
Yeah, and in Amsterdam?
In Amsterdam, you cut it in pieces.
Let's have it Amsterdam style.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Do you want onions and pickles with it?
What is the normal way?
With everything.
I'll have everything. That's
The
great.
whole package.
The whole package. Beautiful. And
You
this
want-
is actually raw?
This is raw. It's marinated with salty, and then we eat it with the Dutch flag.
So this is a patriotic duty in the Netherlands.
Yeah,
Is this, people say this is a healthy thing to eat.
it is.
So how do you say delicious and healthy?
Lekker en gezond.
Lekker en gezond.
Yeah,
Raw fish.
raw fish.
Why not? This will make me a good man.
You already are, but now you're better.
Lekker en gezond. Lekker en gezond. There are certain words you want to know, and when you're clowning around in the market, lekker en gezond. What is that? Tasty, lekker, and gezond, healthy. Gezondheid, to your health when somebody sneezes. Gezondheid. Hey, I hope you're enjoying our look at the Netherlands outside of Amsterdam. I want to remind you, we are going local with our food and our drink. I can't stop eating and drinking this stuff. I've just noticed I've got 2 shows here, 2 Monday night travels. I got to stay at this for 3 hours here, but I must be a cultural teacher and explain to you a little more about my Geneva. You drink it room temperature. It's kind of like whiskey, but not quite as strong as Scotch whiskey. And you drink it straight, you drink it room temperature. Oh, I love that. I really do. I don't drink it unless I'm in the Netherlands or unless I'm doing a Monday night travel episode on the Netherlands. But when you travel, look at me right in the eyes. When you travel, you must be a cultural chameleon. In England, you drink tea. In Prague, you drink Pilsner, great beer. In Tuscany, you drink full-bodied red wine, Vino Rosso Corposo. In Greece, you drink a nice cloudy glass of ouzo. And in the Netherlands, what's the word? Jenever. You never. And if you want to kind of even do better, you go to a little herring stand and you have your herring. I can't stop eating these things. It's just, it feels kind of gross, but this is delicious. Pickled herrings. You've got to have it when you're in the Netherlands, especially. A lot of times you eat something here and it's not quite as good. You're not in the right ambience. It's physically not as good. When you go there, they know how to do it. It just feels right. That's good. Hey, I mentioned that Haarlem is a good base for seeing the Netherlands. It's very close to the airport. It's 20 minutes from Amsterdam. When we do our best of Europe tours, we stay in Haarlem to see Amsterdam. It just makes sense. It's cheaper, it's friendlier, it's safer. You get on the train and bam, you're in Amsterdam. You come home, it's cute, cozy, and cobbled. We're going to show you Haarlem in just a moment. I want to remind you, we can't do our TV show without can't do Monday Night Travel without our Monday Night Travel crew. Today, we've got Julianne moderating this episode. We've got Lisa behind the scenes for the second show tonight. They will flip-flop. Gabe is also on our staff. Ben normally is, but he's in Russia. Won't tell you what he's doing, but he's in Russia for about a year. We'll check in with Gabe later, I'm sure. I want to remind you, if you want to see these shows without any pauses, all of our shows, maybe you wanted to see Amsterdam. It's easy. Go to ricksteves.com, go into the TV section. You got 100 shows to choose from. No ads, just straightforward. Go there, click. It's free. It's fun. We're going to have Q&A. If you've got any questions about anything, write them down in the Q&A section, and Julianne will get them organized and we'll answer them after the show. I want to remind you, we got links to everything of importance in this show. Everything, Mayels, wetland safaris, our tours to the Netherlands. We've got great tours to the Low Countries, and also music. I would have never gone to Europe without music. My dad started importing pianos from the Netherlands. My first night in Europe, when I was 14 years old, was in a small town, Ede, outside of Amsterdam. And my first memory was with my mom stepping outside of the hotel. The hotel was De Witt Hindi, and seeing people, just a whole traffic jam of people with bicycles, one-speed bikes, and in their baskets were their wooden shoes. They were all going out to the fields to work in the fields, and they needed wooden shoes so they could walk in the soggy water or in the soggy polder land. That was to visit the biggest piano factory in Europe at the time, the Rippin Piano Factory. I wouldn't have gone to Europe had my dad not decided. He was a piano tuner. His birthday was yesterday. Passed away a few years ago, but he's still here. And he decided we can go to Europe and see the piano factories. Thanks, Dad. And then I paid for my trips after that by teaching piano. If you like our TV show, to a great extent, it's because of Steve Camerano, our editor, who loves music. And, one of the heroes, the unsung heroes of our TV production is Steve Camerano's musical touch. And I've got a musical staff. In fact, Julianne, who's with us right now as our moderator, she's written and performed and produced her own album. It's called Goodbye, Forget Me. Goodbye, Forget Me. And you can listen to it. And there's a link and you can check it out. I know a lot of you like Julianne just from corresponding with her during Monday Night Travel and so on. Her music will blow you away. So check that out. Tonight, we've also got a flash poll. As I mentioned, when we're done with the video, we'll put up 5 experiences we had during the show, and you get your opportunity to choose which one. And the winner doesn't even matter, but we're going to see who likes what the most. And now it's time to go back to Haarlem. Here's to Frans Hals. Outside of Rembrandt, probably the greatest Dutch painter. Well, Van Gogh was pretty good too. Okay, let's head back. Thank you for joining us on Monday Night Travel. We're in Haarlem. We're enjoying our jenever and our pickled herrings.
To uncover some of Haarlem's sights, dodge bikes down narrow, characteristic lanes. Just down the street, Haarlem's top museum features the work of its most famous son, the great portrait artist Frans Hals. Here, in a room full of his masterpieces, we get a good taste of Protestant Dutch art. When the Dutch broke away from Spain and the Catholic Church in the 1600s, they established an independent Protestant republic. While this was great for freedom, it was a crisis for painters. No more wealthy bishops and art-loving kings to commission grand works of art. Dutch society was a merchant society, and now artists worked for a new kind of customer.
By the way, I just that on camera, I was just looking at. I'm working right now with my staff on a 6-hour sweep through art history in Europe. And we're taking advantage of a lot of the great art we've shot over the years. And that on camera happened to make the cut because we're talking about Dutch art, the art of the merchants, and the beautiful art of Frans Hals. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Europe. I'm going to meet my film crew, and we're going to spend 12 days in Florence, Rome, and Athens shooting art and on cameras to help complete 3 of the 6 one-hour shows we're producing for public television. And this is going to be our biggest project yet. I'm so excited about it. I probably shouldn't even be talking about it yet because it's not ready for prime time, but it's going to be in about a year. 6 hours, the story of European art, enjoying art because you understand it better.
These are the ego-boosting portraits of city big shots. They epitomize the independent and upwardly mobile Dutch of the 17th century, the men who made the golden age golden. These Dutchmen worked hard and were proud of it. Here, some business leaders close a deal. They enjoyed displaying the fruits of their labor, like this, an exquisitely detailed still life of good food. No preachy Madonnas or saints, but a canvas reminder that this household ate very well. And this family had some fine pewterware. In this woman's portrait, her elegant dress and jewelry are painted with as much care as her face. Painters showed city pride as well. The centerpiece of most Dutch cities is the church. You see it in 300-year-old paintings.
And art is the closest thing to a time tunnel experience you can get in your travels. That takes you back because you went to the Frans Hals Museum and checked it out. And then you walk back out on the square, you stand in the same spot as that painter did 300 years ago. And
you see it today as you explore.
whoa.
Haarlem's Groot Kerk, or Great Church, towers over the market square as if to bless all the business that takes place below. Inside, you find a towering Gothic nave, which was whitewashed and purged of its Catholic ornamentation when the Reformation arrived in 1566.
I just had a deja vu. I was here a couple of years ago with one of our tours. This is the first stop on our Best of Europe tour, the same route I've been doing since I was a kid in my 20s, Europe's best 3,000 miles in 20 days. We fly into Amsterdam, we sleep in Haarlem. On the first night, we have our orientation meeting. Then we go out and have an Indonesian rice toffel dinner. And then for dessert, we go into the church and we listen to this grand pipe organ. And everybody's jet laggy, and I get to watch them trying to stay awake with jet lag as this organ drones on in what was once a very exciting concert. But we watch it for a little while, we listen to it for a little while, then we head home and we sleep well on our first night in Europe because we had so much fun on the day we landed.
Small frescoed sections revealed when the whitewash was cleaned off show how the entire church was originally decorated. As was the case in many Protestant countries, rather than huge, preachy works of visual art like frescoes and statues promoting the message of the church, the artistic emphasis was put on music. Protestant churches invested in mighty pipe organs. Haarlem's towering organ has been giving worship here an inspirational soundtrack since 1738. And visitors enjoy free concerts weekly.
Yo, that was good. You know, all over Europe, you can stop into churches and hear pipe organs when the pipe organist is practicing. You'd be surprised how often you can just dip into the church, sit down, and listen to the organist practice. It's free. It's beautiful. It takes you someplace you didn't know you were going to go. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago today, I was finishing my hike around Mount Blanc. I was up at 6,000 feet above Chamonix. And we took the lift after hiking for 60 miles around Mount Blanc. We took the lift back into Chamonix where we started 6 days earlier. We walked through the town, got to the main square, and the pipe organist was playing in the church. We dipped into the church celebrating the fact that we had completed our hike, and the pipe organ was playing just gloriously. If you hear beautiful pipe organ music, go into the church, sit down, enjoy it. Hey, by the way, I reminded you that the Dutch have great public transportation, and we love to show drive-bys to make a transition from one place to the next in our shows. Sometimes we do train-bys if we're not driving, but we're using public transportation. We had a lot of train-bys going one direction. We needed train-by going the other direction. We didn't have it because we didn't want two train-bys in a row going the same direction. That'd be kind of bad. We wanted to go this way and then that way. So we had to turn one of our train-bys backwards. And I don't normally reveal these kind of cheatings, but if you look carefully on this train, you can see the two marking a second-class car is actually backwards or inside out or whatever it be. If you turn the film around, check this out.
With Europe's densest population.
See that two? I don't think that's a correct two, because that train's going in the other direction. You'll notice, because in about 10 seconds, the train's going to go in the opposite direction. The little things we do to bring you beautiful TV.
The Netherlands has invested in an impressive public transportation infrastructure. Buses and trains seem to go everywhere all the time. After leaving Haarlem, in a few minutes we're in Rotterdam with its striking new train station. Rotterdam has a gleaming skyline and Europe's largest port. It's a reminder of the Dutch knack for international trade. Locals say that while the money is spent in Amsterdam, it's made here in Rotterdam. They boast that shirts in Rotterdam are sold with the sleeves already rolled up. A walk through this thriving pedestrian zone complements our quaint old world sightseeing with a dose of today's reality. Rotterdam's port is the third largest in the world.
Got to remind you, don't just do all the cute old stuff. You don't want, the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike, and you don't want just, people in wooden shoes. You want to see today's Netherlands, and you see that in a city like Rotterdam.
With a harbor tour, you can appreciate its immensity. The port handles 35,000 ocean-going vessels each year. That's almost 100 ships a day. While most of these ships sail the open seas, this is where the Rhine River meets the ocean. And from here, riverboats filled with either tourists or cargo can go all the way through Europe to the Black Sea.
Man, I just love Rotterdam. I've never spent a night there, but I've been there many times. You get there in less than an hour by train from anywhere you're going to stay, I'd say. Then you take 4 or 5 hours to see the town, you get in the train and go back home.
Back in the 17th century, the Dutch East India Company, which did business in ports all around the world, was, in a way, the first great multinational corporation. Today, the Dutch, with little in the way of natural resources, still make their serious money in trade. They remain among the world's great shippers.
So, okay, Rotterdam you got to do. But there's a lot of little towns, little Delft kind of towns, Aalsmeer. You got Hoorn, you got so many cute little towns, and there must be 5 or 6 very cute little towns like Haarlem. We decided to give Hoorn a little love, Hoorn, farther north. Check this out.
After mighty Rotterdam, the tiny but historic port of Hoorn, a couple hours to the north, seems quaint. But in its day, it was one of 6 trading cities that joined forces to create the Dutch East India Company. It evokes a rich history from its once formidable harbor to its main square. Overlooking the square is the Westfries Museum, which takes you vividly back to Holland's golden age. Stepping into the venerable building, which dates from the 1600s, the floor creaks. Its planks were salvaged from centuries-old trading ships, which likely sailed all the way to the Spice Islands on the far side of the world. Here you feel the pride and the power of the Dutch when they dominated world trade and brutally capitalized on their far-flung colonial empire. Pondering group portraits above the mantel, you can imagine the influence and the wealth of these tycoons. Here they're portrayed as if they control the globe. In a way, they did. And much of that was because of the value of the spices they imported. With the bland cuisine of Europe back then, you can imagine the demand for these new exotic spices. You could spice up both your food and your life with peppercorns, cloves, and cinnamon. And nutmeg was so valuable, it was said a bag of these could buy a house in 17th century Holland.
Imagine that. They really liked their spices. In fact, the Dutch liked their spices so much they took over an area called Indonesia today, and they named it the Spice Islands. And they brought home all sorts of spices so they could eat more interesting food. When I was that 14-year-old kid, on my first trip to the Netherlands, my favorite meal was in a Dutch restaurant, in the Bali restaurant. And it's called a rice table, a rice tafel. And you have rice as a base, and then they bring 20 different little dishes. And you just sample all these fancy dishes. It's a way to show off your spices. Merchants would demonstrate what they had to sell by serving somebody this spice table, this rice table. We don't have that in this show, but when you go to the Netherlands, you'll want to have, you'll go to Indonesian restaurants because that's eating ethnic in the Netherlands, their former colony. And you'll have a rice table, or the small version of that, if you don't want 20 courses, is a bami goreng or a nasi goreng. Really a cool, quick lunch or dinner. Hey, right now we're going to take a little break from the show, and we're going to do some of these Where's Rick teases. Every show starts with a little goofy little way to catch your attention. We just saw me standing on a chair in the beginning of this show. This is 5 in a row. And it's a drinking game, so get your gin or your beer or your Coca-Cola or your lemonade or whatever you got. And if you get it wrong, you got to take a sip. If you get it right, got to take a sip. Right now, we're going to enjoy the openings of 5 Rick Steves Europe shows and see which ones we can identify.
Bon dia, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time we're in the land of Picasso, Gaudi, Salvador Dali, and coffee con leche.
I said bon dia. I hope that's Catalan. I don't know. Bon dia. I think it is. It must be. And this guy's named Juan. He's in my book. I've got a picture of him. He runs this cute little bar where all the tourists go in the Boqueria Market. I gave you a little hint on where we are, but watch Juan jump into action here.
It's Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time we're having a jolly good time with lots of royal pageantry.
This must be so annoying to these guards.
In London. Thanks for joining us. Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time, I'm trying to find my hotel somewhere in the back canals.
This is the city we were not going to go to, but I guess we do a little.
Of Amsterdam. Thanks for joining us. Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. Get ready to be immersed in the wonder of this continent's most romantic city.
If you don't know this, I'm kicking you out of Monday Night Travel. I'm just kicking you out.
Venice. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, back to Holland.
Exploring Holland, we're struck by the big skies, fertile fields, and flat land. The country is bounded by the North Sea. Where there are no natural dunes to keep the sea out, the Dutch have had to build mighty walls or dikes to protect their farms and communities. Roughly half the people and half the land here in the Netherlands are below sea level. And for 700 years, the Dutch have developed their expertise at keeping this country dry. It's a constant battle. And now with climate change and rising sea levels a reality, the work is that much harder and more expensive. Even with impressive dikes already in place, the Dutch are moving mountains of sand and mud to fortify their dikes and protect their next generation. Famous for both their frugality and their foresight, the Dutch are investing billions of euros as climate change makes its costly impact felt on sea level communities here and around the globe.
Let me just get political here. Think of what we are doing to protect fossil fuels. Okay, that's the real livelihood of some very important people. But look at the big picture. The whole world is incurring costly expenses to fight climate change, and it's just going to get worse. The Dutch people, they are working so hard like any country, like any city that's at sea level, and it's just going to get worse. We got to get real about this.
And flood protection requires more than massive dikes. Built where the big river meets the sea, the Maasland storm surge barrier is an amazing engineering project. When necessary, its two arms, each as long as the Eiffel Tower is high, are swung together to create a barrier. This stops a storm surge from flooding the Rotterdam Delta where 1 million people live.
So imagine 2 Eiffel Towers on their side, on wheels, rolling in whenever there's that perfect storm that's going to bring a super high tide to protect the city of Rotterdam. Cities at sea level all over the world are going to need to invest in this. And they are right now.
Low-lying American cities are importing Dutch expertise as they too face the reality of the future. Along with their role as protectors of the Netherlands, some of the dikes and sand dunes that make the North Sea coast are playgrounds as well. And ever since the industrial age kicked into gear, local workers have come here for their R&R. At the seaside resort of Scheveningen, that Dutch love of life is cranked way up. Rather than fight the sea, here, people play in it. And for over a century, Dutch holiday goers have enjoyed this promenade.
And this is Scheveningen. Scheveningen. When the Nazis would capture somebody, no, when the Dutch in World War II would capture somebody they thought was a Nazi spy, they would make them pronounce this town. If they were actually Dutch, they could pronounce it correctly. If they were Germans, faking like they were Dutch, they couldn't say the name of this town, which I can't either. Scheveningen, Scheveningen. Okay, now we're going to look at the little bit of Mayel and Wetland Safari that did make it into this show. And I'm so glad I got to show you the whole thing.
With the comfort of knowing Dutch engineers are keeping the sea at bay, my favorite days in Holland are spent below sea level, in its quaint and picturesque corners. Here you can experience the landscape of Holland as it was back in the 17th century. Exploring villages that seem to be built on both land and water, you get a sense for what life must have been like for the Dutch centuries ago. In the town of Enkhuizen is the Zuiderzee Museum.
By the way, the Dutch have some of the best open-air folk museums anywhere in Europe. Their culture lends itself to this. They're very modern, but at the same time, they respect and sort of honor and treasure their heritage, and they display it. They preserve it and display it for their children, for the next generation, and for visitors like you and me in their open-air folk museums. What a fun thing for me to do. I've got a couple of hours here. I get to let the crew have a cup of coffee, and then I'll run through here and see what action's going on, and I'll make a shot list, and then we'll go with the crew and we'll shoot the things that are most interesting for television as we put together a bit on this or that museum. So I didn't know exactly, it's positive serendipity or negative serendipity, but I got to run around and check it and then weave it together. You'll see what was going on in this given day at Enkhuizen.
While the modern world threatens traditional ways of Dutch life, this creative museum strives to keep them alive for future generations to appreciate. Its sprawling layout allows visitors to travel through both time and culture. In one corner, people are living as if still in a remote fishing village back in 1905. Exploring the park, you enjoy intimate slices of life from Old Holland. The coopers artfully make their barrels watertight. The coal furnace is stoked to run the belt-driven laundromat. Sudsing, agitating, and wringing. The sailmaker stitches a sail. The blacksmith pounds his iron in his wooden clogs. Fishermen are smoking their eels. And visitors devour the entire experience. And here in the Netherlands, if you know where to look, you can also enjoy traditional experiences outside the museums.
Oh, what an opportunity. It's a nice windy day. We talked ourselves onto a boat and we sailed across the Zuiderzee. Simon, my producer, is a sailor and he just jumped right in there. He just loved to help hoist the sails. And I was a happy camper because we got some beautiful footage here to show off a good old-fashioned sailboat, a fishing boat on the Zuiderzee.
We're sailing to the fishing village of Marken in a traditional fishing boat. A few of these venerable boats survive. This one earns its keep by hiring out to visitors, and in the case of this motley crew, putting them to work.
How are we doing, Captain?
Almost. One more pull.
How old is this boat?
It's from 1904. Yeah, it's 110 years old, this boat.
What was the purpose? What was the work it did?
The purpose is a fishing boat. It's a working boat. They just did fishing with it, nothing else.
Now, back then, this was saltwater, right?
It was salt water because there was no dike in the north, so it was salt water. So they fished on herring, anchovies.
How many people would work on the boat when it went out?
Well, they were with one skipper and one mate, so they actually did it with two people.
This man, by the way, he speaks what the Dutch called their languages. Of course, you grew up speaking Dutch, but if all you speak is Dutch, your world is pretty small. And educated Dutch people, and that's essentially everybody, they speak their languages. That's French, German, and English. I bet this man speaks all three of those, plus his home language, with equal fluency. Only two.
They sailed and worked this ship. They even did fishing with it, with two people.
So they would go fishing for how many days?
On Sunday they went to church, of course, and they started on Monday morning, and they came back Friday evening.
5 days out, two men in this ship.
Yeah, they were. That was the time of wooden ships and iron men.
Wooden ships and iron men. Those were the days.
Yeah.
Marken welcomes visitors with its charming harbor. It's a favorite with vacationing yachters who enjoy late sunsets with convivial happy hours. The oldest homes in the village were built on the highest ground. They huddle together as if finding strength in numbers in the face of the next flood. In the 19th century, this harbor was the thriving home to over 100 fishing boats. But along with fishing, devastating floods were a way of life here in Marken. When they walled off the sea with a massive dike 50 miles north of here, the salt water turned to fresh water and the sea was controlled. It was tough on the fishing industry, but overall, good for the people. No more floods. While Marken remains both traditional and idyllic to this day, like so much of the Netherlands, it's a place where the past and the present mingle comfortably. The Netherlands offers travelers a rich variety of sights and experiences. And traveling here, sooner or later, you find yourself exclaiming, everything's just so Dutch. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling. Tot ziens.
Tot ziens, tot ziens. That's one of the few Dutch words you'll learn. The Dutch speak English so well that you have a hard time needing to know the local language, but it helps to know, obviously, a few of the play words. Hey, I've enjoyed my herring, my pickled herring. I've saved a little for the next show. And now it's dessert time. Ha! I get two dinners, two desserts. I love the way when you eat something and enjoy it in Europe, you bite into it years later on the other half of the world, and it takes you right there. This is a very important part of your Dutch experience. A stroopwafel, you'll find them all over. Hey, Julianne, that was fun. I think we'll have not a word from our sponsor right now, but I'd like to have a flash, what do you call it? A flash survey. Do you have a survey that we can all do?
Yeah, we do have the survey here called Dutch Experiences. Let me launch it. All right, there we go.
Okay, so people just click on their favorite experiences. What would you, if you just had one thing to do tomorrow in a magical trip to the Netherlands, just click it. Climb a windmill in a stiff wind, tour the flower auction in Aalsmeer, paddle a canoe on a wetland safari, shop for Delft ware, or eat a raw herring. Wow. Okay, you got about 5 seconds as I take another munch of my stroopwafel to click your favorite one. Eat a stroopwafel. I'm going to write in eat a stroopwafel maybe.
Okay.
Okay. So there you go. Can we X out of that now? And you can write, tally it all up, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'll end the poll now.
Okay. So you must have some questions.
Yeah, before we get to questions, could we have a word from our sponsor?
Oh, a word from our sponsor. Thank you. You know, what I'd like to do is just take you all to ricksteves.com just for a sec as we're counting up that flash survey thing. But if you go to ricksteves.com, you know, for 40 years, our publicity stunt as we built this business is to provide people with great information for free. You know, our TV show, our radio show, and all of our lectures are available here. Monday Night Travel is free. Click there, you see what's going on. Next week, we're going to Turkey with our friend Lolly. After that, I'm going to Europe for 3 weeks, and we're going to have some guest appearances. And I'm very excited to have Cameron back. Cameron's just come back from Europe. He's going to talk about Iceland. We've got a lot of great shows coming up. So Monday Night Travel. I want to remind you, all of our TV shows are right here. Our latest is a 1-hour special on the best of the Alps. If you missed that, you can watch it right there. We just watched in Belgium and the Netherlands. You click there and we watched the Netherlands beyond Amsterdam. Maybe you did want to see a little bit of Amsterdam. Well, you can certainly go there and check that out. What else would you find? I think the guides marketplace. We've got 100 guides in Europe. They're ready to work, but right now it's not quite prime time in Europe for bus tours. We've got our tour program nearly sold out for next year. We got almost 30,000 people booked for tours next year. But for now, our guides are doing a special thing, and we've listed guides for hire. If you go this year for a special price, the prices vary from country to country depending on the standard of living in those countries. But these are all Rick Steves tour guides who are eager to be your private guide. You can learn more about that when you go into the guides marketplace at ricksteves.com. And the big part of our business, of course, is our tour program. And if you click right here on tours, you can then learn about our 40 different itineraries. You got all of our tours, top sellers, and seats available. Because we're almost sold out, I'm going to seats available. And this is listing tours that have a lot of seats still open. For instance, we do have a tour that covers Belgium and the Netherlands, what we just saw now. And that tour, 11 days, if we see what's still available, we can see here, the first tour of the year, March 28, is filling fast. And whoa, the other ones are all waitlisted. So that tour is essentially sold out. But we've got lots of tours available on our website. And if you're curious about that, just check that out. Okay, that's a word from our sponsor. And now I bet we have our tally from our flash poll.
All right, great. I'll share the results. I have to say the one that won would also be the one that I would have picked. So let's see here. All right, can you see the results?
Oh, look at that. Half of the people went for a canoe ride with Mayel. That was actually, that got the best presentation in the show, but I can understand that really was a great experience. What's next then, Julianne? The flower auction in Aalsmeer?
Third was the Climb a Windmill.
Shop for Delftware. This nose is out. Eat a raw herring. Eat a raw herring.
Who was that 5%?
Lekker and gezonda. That's funny. When I'm filming, sometimes we have to take like 20 takes. So I remember when I was shooting that thing, I had to eat so many herrings. I felt like a fish waddling out of there. It was I was sick of herring after that.
Well,
okay. Hey, thank you for doing that. That was interesting. Let's have some questions.
Great. Well, the first one, I think we're all wondering, can we just have a whole show of the cutting room floor clips? Because that clip of you and Mayel on the canoe, that was just magical.
You know, that was some of our better productions start with something on the cutting room floor. Our fascism show was a huge hit. And it all started because I shot at Berchtesgaden, Hitler's Eagle's Nest, and it didn't make it in the show. And I was I'm so frugal, you know, we shot it. I want to have some way to use it. I thought, let's cobble together. We had 3 or 4 things that were Nazi related in World War II and Holocaust related. I thought we'll make a little show. Turns out we started it, but it became a mission creep, and we ended up doing a great hour. But we used that leftover footage. That Mayel canoe trip actually made it into a half-hour pledge special, along with some other things that never made it into shows. So we find a way to get those aired because we love all our children.
Yeah, it was a beautiful clip. It made me emotional, almost the music and everything. It was nice.
Yeah, it really was. Thank you.
And the second question, we have a lot of people wondering tonight, of course, there's herring is a Dutch food, but are there other foods that are special to the Netherlands?
Why would you need more than herring? Yeah, you know, Indonesian food is just famous. And also food from colonies in Africa is very popular. Suriname, I think, was a Dutch colony. But seafood is really good. I'm sure there's lots, but I mean, it doesn't it's not one of my favorite places from a fancy cuisine point of view. You know, colonial food and seafood is what I would go for.
Yeah. All right. And then quite a few people were wondering tonight, which I'm sure is a common question. What is the difference between Holland and the Netherlands?
You know, to call the Netherlands Holland is like calling the United States Texas. Holland is just the biggest state. In fact, there's two states, I think Upper and Lower Holland or North and South Holland, or something like that. And that makes a giant share of the country called the Netherlands. And most of what we think of as Dutch, all the cliches of the Netherlands, it's in Holland. So, you know, Holland is what we think of as the Netherlands. It's most of the land, most of the people, most of the cliches. But it's incorrect to call the country Holland. The country is the Netherlands. And two big states are like North and South Dakota, North and South Holland.
Well, that makes sense. That's pretty easy to understand.
Yep.
Okay, and we do have a viewer that's actually watching from the Netherlands tonight, which I thought was kind of fun. His name is Andy, and he was wondering, have you ever been to Den Haag before, Rick? That's where he's coming from.
Oh yeah, I've been to Den Haag. Den Haag is the home of the World Peace, the World Peace Palace and the World Court. You get a lot of news coming out when something goes to the World Court. It goes to Den Haag. Den Haag is the big town that Scheveningen, that little resort town, is a suburb of. And Den Haag has some beautiful sights. And if you're traveling with kids, there's a little mini Holland there with all the little, it's sort of like a Disneyland kind of thing with all the miniatures. And it's called Rotterdam, and that's near Den Haag, The Hague.
I love that miniature museums are a thing across Europe too. They seem to be.
They're into that, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are. I think because people like miniature stuff, so they're always a big hit.
And the next question comes from Susan. She was wondering, does Jenever taste the same as other gins?
If you asked a Dutch person, they'd probably say, no, this is Jenever, you know. If you ask me, yeah. It just tastes like good gin to me. I don't really know well enough, but it's got its own juniper sort of base, and it's got its own herbs that make it a little more unique to the Netherlands. But I think you'd have to be a connoisseur to really appreciate the difference.
Yeah. And today, of course, we saw the windmills, and there's a lot of wind when you were filming in general. Was it difficult to film in all that wind? Did it mess up the sound at all, or did you guys find a way to?
Well, we have fuzzies. We put a fuzzy on my mic. And if there's no wind, we don't want a fuzzy. If there's a lot of wind, if there's wind, we put a little fuzzy. And if there's a lot of wind, we put a big fuzzy.
Yeah.
And you can be in a wind storm, and if you got a big enough fuzzy, you don't hear the wind buffeting. But wind buffeting makes your audio worthless. So under my shirt, you can kind of see, if there's no wind, you can't see my mic. But if there's a lot of wind, I've got a pretty big fuzzy under there.
Is fuzzy the technical term for?
Fuzzy, well, professionals call it a fuzzy wuzzy.
Yeah. Oh, of course. And you mentioned how public transportation is so great in Amsterdam. Nancy was wondering, do you really need a car to get around to these small towns?
No, you don't need a car at all. A car is kind of a headache because it's hard for most Americans to imagine, but if you go to one town, you can go to any other town this hour faster than you could drive with no problem with parking, really cheap by hopping on a train. It's like you got a bus pass to get around Amsterdam. That bus pass gets you on all the trains that go everywhere in that part of the country. So there's not, unless you got something in particular you want to do, I think a car is a headache in the Netherlands, frankly. I really like to use the public transit, and you feel smart, you feel good. You drive into Amsterdam, you just regret it. You take the train into Amsterdam, you step out of the train station and hello, Holland, you're right there in the middle.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds great. Let's see. Oh, we saw a little clip just briefly in that old-fashioned town village where they were wearing the wooden clogs. Do you know why they wore wooden clogs?
They wore wooden clogs. I've heard different stories, but it floats. If you drop it, it doesn't sink. But mostly it was because you had to walk. First of all, you're poor society. You don't have fancy shoes. You just carve it out of wood. And they've got machines. You know, as a tourist, we take our groups to a wooden shoemaking factory, and they've got a mold, and you say you're a size 7, and they pull out a size 7 shoe, and they lock it in with the drill, and the drill will kind of go in the size 7 model, and it all follows this thing, and then you got your model and you got the exact copy, You put it on your foot. It's perfect.
Wow.
People who wear wooden shoes love them. They wear them because they like them. They don't wear them because tourists will take your picture, you know. But originally it was for people working in the fields so that they could not get wet and stay warm when they're out in the fields all day long.
Wow, it is practical. It seems uncomfortable, but
seems uncomfortable. But every Dutch person I've talked to, they say, I don't know. They just say they're actually quite natural to wear.
And Donald was wondering, what is the best time to visit the Netherlands? When the flowers are in bloom, or is there another time?
That's a good point. If you like flowers, you want to go there in the spring when the flowers are blooming. In fact, Keukenhof. I'm not that into flowers, and I've been every time I'm there in the spring, in May or whenever the Keukenhof is, when the tulips are blooming. We take our groups to Keukenhof because it's the thing to do in the Netherlands when it's open, and it's amazing. It's mind blowing how beautiful those flowers are. So if you're into that, go in the spring and go to Keukenhof. Keukenhof is the national sort of flower festival. But the Netherlands, the weather blows in and blows out. You're right in the sea. There's no hills. There's a lot of wind. So it can be rainy and cloudy and then sunny. You just gotta have good weather and just do what you want to do in spite of the weather. I like the summer best, but it's certainly good in the spring and the fall.
Yeah, just warm up with some Jenever if it's cold.
I almost forgot. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yep. And our last question for tonight, we heard a couple times tonight you saying, oh, it's so Dutch. It's so Dutch. What is one word you would use to describe the Netherlands?
Cozy. Cozy. It's so sweet. It's so tidy. It's so neighborly. It's so charming and traditional. You've got, when you walk through a village, all the houses have their windows open. I mean, they've got big windows. You can see right through them to the other side because they like a lot of light, and they have lace to give them a little privacy. And everybody's got these beautiful lace windows on both sides of their little house, and they have their privacy and they have their light, and they'll sit outside and they'll enjoy their flowers and they'll sip their Jenever, and it's just cozy. So I would say there's a lot of cliches that travelers have. And when you go to the Netherlands and you think of a cliche about the Netherlands, it's actually quite true. It's just so Dutch. And that's what you find when you go to the Netherlands. Julianne, thanks for moderating tonight. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. And I just want to finish this episode of Monday Night Travel, reminding you next week we're going to Turkey. We're going to be joined by Lolly, who's going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be with us. And she is great. And right now, we're going to just enjoy me screwing up. This is time for bloopers. And bloopers are a way just to celebrate the fact that if you're not having fun making TV, you're not making good TV. And we have a lot of fun making TV, and you'll see it right here. The Netherlands is a lot like its people. Warm, even-keeled, good on bikes. Many windmills used their wind power to turn an Archimedes screw like this. Sooner or later, you find yourself exclaiming. So that was the bloopers in the show at the end of the credits. Now I think we got an extra roll of bloopers just because you've all been such good students.
He become the book person here.
That's Relinka on the left. She's our local guide. She's probably done more of our tours than almost anybody. Relinka's been with us, I think, for 25 years. She's a great guide. We love, and she helps us out on whenever we're filming in the Netherlands. And then we got Simon doing a little jig next to Mayal.
Bye-bye.
It's a progressive place, invigorated by a time-honored spirit of live and let live. Collar good, wardrobe good, hair good.
Yeah. You can swim back this
I'm gonna have my zipper down on the urinal shot. Curbside urinals. Prostitutes who are unionized, taxed, and regulated in marijuana shops that sell coffee. You can sing the Dutch national anthem while I eat my herring.
No, I won't.
That's Relinka's little cameo. Hey, Relinka.
Okay.
Traveling here, it's easy to see how the Netherlands is a lot like its people. Warm, even-keeled, good on bikes. Many windmills used their wind power to turn an Archimedes screw like this. In traveling here, sooner or later, you find yourself exclaiming. That's good beer. That's one reason you come to the Czech Republic.
Actually, I'm getting used to it. Yeah.
Everything is just so Dutch.